Hey guys, YouTuber 100 here. Alright, and now here I am with another Star Trek movie review. Now, here I am with a review of Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. So, yeah. After, the real atrocity with The Final Frontier, this was definitely what I needed. This was definitely, a huge step up from that. So, yeah, once again, this was a pretty good Star Trek movie. As the final film, of the original series, I'd say that the series, the movies did, go out on a pretty good note. Yeah, I mean, definitely, not the greatest note, but still a pretty good one. I mean, yeah, it was definitely, a really good, premise and plot to this film. Yeah, it was basically kind of just kind of the mistaken identity thing because yeah, in this movie we have the Enterprise was like accused of like uh, an unprovoked attack on a Klingon vessel and killing the Chancellor. Oh yeah, as it turned out, Kirk and McCoy ended up being framed for the attack on the Klingon vessel. That's all, but yeah, of course, they didn't, and we have a bunch of the like crews for the other groups of the space colonies or stuff with have the Federation and Klingon and Romulan officers or yeah, and just a bunch of federations and stuff actually ended up plotting to sabotage it and all that. So it turned out we had like Chang was kind of one of the conspirators behind the attacks on the Klingon vessel and stuff, and yeah, it turned out the bird of prey was what's was the thing that ended up being cloaked and causing the attack and stuff, and so yeah, and it was pretty interesting to see we had Kirk and Dr. McCoy kind of being taken for murderers and criminals and stuff, and they're being imprisoned and how they're looked at by other Klingons and other prisoners and the place that they're he were sent to and stuff. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting premise for this. It was definitely kind of different from what we saw in some the previous movies, we did with Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock and Voyage Home and stuff. So yeah, it was definitely a really kind of different turn for plot for a Star Trek movie. But I mean, it was definitely a really good plot for it. Yeah, and yeah, like I said, this film of course is the final film of the original Star Trek series. And yeah, it's the last film to include the members of the original cast. Now, of course, it still does have the all the Enterprise crew still. Of course, still William Shatner as Kirk and Leonard Nimoy as Spock, and also DeForest Kelly and James Doohan and George Takei and yeah, Walter Cohen and again yeah, basically yeah, still all original cast still and still all the Enterprise crew. And once again, they all do pretty good in this film. And yeah, just yeah, and yeah, after three films that were directed by the stars of the movie, three and four were directed by Leonard Nimoy, and then five directed by William Shatner. Yeah, one they finally did get some an actual director for this film. This film was under the direction of Nicholas Meyer, and yeah, he did definitely do a really good direction for this film. And yeah, like I said, as the final film of the original Star Trek series, this film ended up like sending the original Star Trek movie series out on a really good note. So yeah, I would probably give this film probably 3.5 stars out of 4 once again. Yeah, I don't know. I would probably maybe place this like probably under under Voyage home as far as like the best ones. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if I were to rank like the now that I've watched the 6 films of the original Star Trek series, I'd probably say from best to worst it would probably be Wrath of Khan the best, and then Voyage Home, this film, and then Search for Spock, Motion Picture, and then Final Frontier at the bottom. So yeah, so I would say this is probably the third best movie of the original Star Trek film series. Yeah, alright, so yeah, definitely a good movie. So yeah, let me just get right into it. Alright, so the movie opens with just, with Praxis, which is just a Klingon moon, ended up just, like, exploding without any sort of warning. And then, like, the USS Excelsior, which is commanded by Captain Sulu, ended up being struck by a shockwave, and the crew ends up, like, discovering that a lot of the moon was obliterated. And so, as a result of that, that, that like all the destruction ends up like putting the Klingon Empire in turmoil. And so, the Klingons just ended up like suing for peace with the United Federation of Planets, which is like really like a long-term enemy of the Klingon. And so, yeah. And then apparently like Starfleet ended up sending the USS Enterprise A to meet with the Klingon Chancellor Gorgon and then try to escort him on Earth for some negotiations. And at first, like, Kirk really was not on board with it because of, like, the Klingons' history with him. And of course, like, what happened before with the Klingons ending up, like, murdering his son, David. Yeah. And so, yeah, Kirk really was not on board to do with it, but, yeah, Spock ended up, like, just, like, volunteering for the Enterprise. So, yeah. And so then, eventually, then, the Enterprise and the Gorkon's battlecruiser end up just having a rendezvous. And yeah, they end up like heading towards Earth. Yeah. But then eventually, like later that night, it just seemed that the Enterprise just ended up firing a pair of photon torpedoes at the Klingon ship. And then as a result, like the gravity on the Klingon vessel ended up like being disabled. Well, yeah. And then like during all the shenanigans that happened with that, it then showed like there were just 2 figures like just in Starfleet outfits and along with gravity boots ended up like boarding the Klingon ship, and they end up like shooting at Gorkon, and then they just end up beaming away, and then Kirk and Dr. McCoy ended up beaming onto the Klingon ship to try to save Gorkon, but then he ended up dying. And so then the Klingons then thought that it was Kirk and Dr. McCoy that ended up were the ones that killed Gorkon. And so then they ended up being put on trial and like being charged with assassination by the Klingons. And they felt that since the way Kirk felt about the Klingons with his history, they felt that he was responsible for it. And so then Kirk and Dr. McCoy ended up were like found guilty, and they were sentenced to life in prison, meant on like Rua Pente, which is just a frozen asteroid. And it turned out that Gorkon's daughter became the new Chancellor of the Klingons. And then she it turned out like the conference to ensure the negotiations ended up being relocated, to a secret location. And then also like after like the Enterprise learned about Kirk and McCoy being imprisoned for life, Spock then assumed command of the Enterprise, and then they just were trying to come up with ways to rescue Kirk and Dr. McCoy. And then, after Kirk and Dr. McCoy arrived on the Rua Pente, they then met, like, a shapeshifter, Mardia, and then, like, she was, like, trying to befriend them, and she was, like, trying to offer them an escape route, but, like, what she was really doing was she was just, like, setting them up. Yeah, because she was just trying to make their arranged deaths seem accidental. Yeah, and then eventually it's revealed to Kirk and Dr. McCoy what Mardia's intentions were, and then she ended up like transforming into like a double of Kirk, and her and Kirk got into a fight. But then the prison guards then arrived, and then they killed Mardia to make sure there weren't any witnesses. And then the prison warden was about to tell Kirk and Dr. McCoy who actually set them up, but then Kirk and Dr. McCoy ended up being beamed aboard the Enterprise. And then it turned out that the two actual assassins who launched the attack on the Klingon vessel were actually aboard the Enterprise, and the crew was looking for them. And it showed that the assassins ended up like they were found dead. But like Kirk and Spock ended up like tricking the accomplice into thinking that the assassins were still alive. And then eventually it's discovered that the killer was actually Valorous, which was Spock's protege. And then Spock tried to initiate a mind meld on her to try to discover the identity of the conspirators. And they eventually learned that they're the group of the Federation Klingon and Romulan officers who are plotting to sabotage the peace talks. Which, like, they then, like, feel that the changes is that they could bring the changes their success might bring the particular undiscovered country. And they also learned that Chang actually was one of the conspirators. And they learned that the torpedoes that actually struck the Klingon cruiser actually were from a prototype bird of prey, and it turned out like the torpedoes they fire can actually, like, the bird of prey can actually be cloaked as they fire the torpedoes. And it turned out that the bird of prey actually hovered right below the franchise at the time of the torpedo launch. And so then the Enterprise crew ended up contacting Sulu, and they told them that the conference was being held at the camp Ketomer, yeah. And then both the Enterprise and Excelsior headed for the talks as quick as they could, and as they were nearing towards the planet, the bird of prey tried to intercept, and the Enterprise was unable to actually track the position of the bird of prey, and then Chang ended up like damaging the Enterprise and Excelsior. But then Uhura suggested to Spock and Dr. McCoy to modify a photon torpedo and home it in on the exhaust emissions of the bird of prey's vessel. And they ended up like using the equipment that was like originally meant to study the gaseous anomalies, and then the impact of the torpedo then revealed the location of the bird of prey, and then the Enterprise and Excelsior together then destroyed the bird of prey with with the torpedoes. Yeah, and then the crews from both the Enterprise and the Excelsior then beamed to the conference, and then they stopped an attempt on the president's life. And then Kirk then just asked all of everyone present to continue on the piece, and then they explained to Gorkon's daughter about the undiscovered country, and then and then all the piece then was made, and then it was shown on the Enterprise that they were ordered back to Earth by Starfleet, then they were being decommissioned, and then and Kirk then like made a Peter Pan reference, and he just said second star to the right and straight on till morning, and so then they just took their time on their return voyage. And as they were heading towards a nearby star, it then just had Kirk like narrating that, though that this is the final, cruise of the Enterprise under his command, that there will be a new team that will take control of the ship and the history, and they will continue on the voyage. And of course, like this would then like be leading towards the next generation. So yeah, it was like a pretty good way, like give this like a actual send off for the original series. So yeah, that was like a good way to like end this, showing that this would really be the last thing with related to the original Star Trek, well, of the original Star Trek series anyway, and then yeah, it would then like transition to the next generation. So yeah, that was kind of an interesting way to end it. And before the film cut to credits, and then just showed like the signatures of the original cast as like just being written across the screen. So yeah, that was like yeah, I guess that was another like good like bookend to this the series of the original Star Trek movies. So yeah, it was a pretty like good bookend and a good way to send off the original series. And so then that's how it ended. So yeah, so like I said, 3.5 stars out of 4. A pretty good movie once again, and a pretty good way to send the original Star Trek series out. So yeah. Alright, so yeah, that does it for a review of Star Trek 6 Undiscovered Country. Hope you guys enjoyed, and so yeah, and that does it for the original Star Trek movie series. Next up, we'll be going through the Next Generation. So reviews for the Next Generation movies are coming up next, so stay tuned for those. Alright, and so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.